to the Elusive Truth with Rich and Larry. Just when you thought things were getting better, the whole world is now a full-blown circus. Let us start off with the greatest show on earth, Ringleader Biden. Here's the latest from Joe about the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, or better known as Putin's war.
Our teams are actively discussing how to make this happen, and today we remain united. We remain united in our purpose to keep pressure mounting on Putin and his war machine. This is a step that we're taking to inflict further pain on Putin, but there will be cost as well here in the United States. I said I would level with the American people from the beginning. And when I first spoke to this, I said defending freedom is going to cost. It's going to cost us as well in the United States. Republicans and Democrats understand that. Republicans and Democrats alike have been clear that we must do this. Over the last week, I've spoken with President Zelensky several times to hear from him about the situation on the ground and to consult and continue to consult with our European allies and about U.S. support for Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. Thus far, we've provided more than $1 billion in security assistance to Ukraine. Shipments of defensive weapons are arriving in Ukraine every day from the United States, and we, the United States, are the ones coordinating the delivery of our allies and partners of similar weapons, from Germany to Finland to the Netherlands. We're working that out. We're also providing humanitarian support for the Ukrainian people, both those still in Ukraine and those who have fled safely to a neighboring country. We're working with humanitarian organizations to surge tens of thousands of tons of food, water, and medical supplies into Ukraine, and with more on the way. Over the weekend, I sent Secretary Blinken to visit our border between Poland and Ukraine and to Moldova to see what the situation was firsthand and report back. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of our Defense Department was also in Europe, meeting with his counterparts and allies on NATO's eastern flank to reassure them, those countries bordering Russia, NATO countries, that we will keep our NATO commitment, the sacred commitment of Article 5. The Vice President Harris is going to be traveling to meet with our allies in Poland and Romania later this week as well. I've made it clear that the United States will share in the responsibility of caring for the refugees so the costs do not fall entirely on the European countries bordering Ukraine. And yesterday I spoke with my counterparts in France, Germany, and the United Kingdom about Russia's escalating violence against Ukraine and the steps that we're going to take together with our allies and partners around the world to respond to this aggression. We are enforcing the most significant package of economic sanctions in history, and it's causing significant damage to Russia's economy. It has caused Russian economy to, frankly, crater. The Russian ruble is now down to 50%, by 50% since Putin's announced his war. 1 ruble is now worth less than 1 American penny. 1 ruble is less than 1 American penny. And preventing Russia's central bank from propping up the ruble and to keep its value up. They're not going to be able to do that now. We cut Russia's largest banks from the international financial system, and it has crippled their ability to do business with the rest of the world. In addition, we're choking off Russia's access to technology like semiconductors that are and sap its economic strength and weaken its military for years to come. Major companies are pulling out of Russia entirely without even being asked, not by us. Over the weekend, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, they all suspended their services in Russia, all of them, joining a growing list of American and global companies from Ford to Nike to Apple. They've suspended their operations in Russia. The U.S. Stock Exchange has halted trading of many Russian securities. And the private sector is united against Russia's vicious war of choice. The U.S. Department of Justice has assembled a dedicated task force to go after the crimes of Russian oligarchs. And we're joining with our European allies to find and seize their yachts, their luxury apartments, their private jets, and all their ill-begotten gains to make sure that they share in the pain of Putin's war. These, by the way, are giant yachts. You've put some of them in your press. I mean, some of them are, I think I read one was over 400 feet long. I mean, this is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The decision today is not without cost here at home. Putin's war is already hurting American families at the gas pump. Since Putin began his military buildup on Ukrainian borders, just since then, the price of the gas at the pump in America went up 75 cents. And with this action, it's going to go up further. I'm going to do everything I can to minimize Putin's price hike here at home. In coordination with our partners, we've already announced that we're releasing 60 million barrels of oil from our joint oil reserves. Half of that, 30 million, is coming from the United States. And we're taking steps to ensure the reliable supply of global energy. We're also going to keep working with every tool at our disposal to protect American families and businesses. Now, let me say this. To the oil and gas companies and to the finance firms that back them, we understand Putin's war against the people of Ukraine is causing prices to rise. We get that. That's self-evident. But, it's no excuse to exercise excessive price increases or padding profits or any kind of effort to exploit this situation or American consumers, exploit them. Russia's aggression is costing us all, and it's no time for profiteering or price gouging. I want to be clear about what we'll not tolerate, but I also want to acknowledge those firms and oil and gas industries that are pulling out of Russia and joining other businesses that are leading by example. This is a time when we have to do our part and make sure we're not taking advantage. Look, let me be clear about two other points. First, it's simply not true that my administration or policies are holding back domestic energy production. That's simply not true. Even amid the pandemic, companies in the United States pumped more oil during my first year in office than they did during my predecessor's first year. We're approaching a record levels of oil and gas production in the United States, and we're on track to set a record of oil production next year. In the United States, 90% of onshore oil production takes place on land that isn't owned by the federal government. And of the remaining 10% that occurs on federal land, the oil and gas industry has millions of acres leased. They have 9,000 permits to drill now. They could be drilling right now, yesterday, last week, last year. They have 9,000 to drill onshore that are already approved. So let me be clear. They are not using them for production now. That's their decision. These are the facts. We should be honest about the facts. Second, this crisis is a stark reminder to protect our economy over the long term, we need to become energy independent. I've had numerous conversations over the last 3 months with our European friends of how they have to wean themselves off of Russian oil. It's just not tenable. It should motivate us to accelerate the transition to clean energy. This is a perspective that our European allies share, and the future where together we can achieve greater independence. Loosening environmental regulations or pulling back clean energy investment will not lower energy prices for families. But transforming our economy to run on electric vehicles powered by clean energy with tax credits to help American families winterize their homes and use less energy, that will help. And if we do what we can, it will mean that no one has to worry about the price of the gas pump in the future. That'll mean tyrants like Putin won't be able to use fossil fuels as weapons against other nations. And it will make America a world leader, manufacturing and exporting clean energy technologies of the future to countries all around the world. This is the goal we should be racing toward. Over the last 2 weeks, the Ukrainian people have inspired the world, and I mean that in a literal sense. They've inspired the world with their bravery, their patriotism, their defiant determination to live free. Putin's war has caused enormous suffering and needless loss of life of women, children, everyone in Ukraine. Both Ukraine and, I might add, Russians. Ukrainian leaders, as well as leaders around the world, have repeatedly called for a ceasefire, for humanitarian relief, for real diplomacy. But Putin seems determined to continue on his murderous path, no matter the cost. Putin's now targeting cities and has been targeting cities and civilians, schools, hospitals, apartment buildings. Last week, he attacked the largest nuclear power plant in Europe with an apparent disregard for the potential of triggering a nuclear meltdown. He has already turned 2 million Ukrainians into refugees. Russia may continue to grind out its advance at a horrible price, but this much is already clear. Ukraine will never be a victory for Putin. Putin may be able to take a city, but he'll never be able to hold the country. And if we do not respond to Putin's assault on global peace and stability today, the cost of freedom and to the American people will be even greater tomorrow. So we're going to continue to support the brave Ukrainian people as they fight for their country. And I call on Congress to pass the $12 billion Ukraine assistance package that I have asked them for of late. Ukrainian people are demonstrating by their physical courage that they are not about to just let Putin take what he wants. That's clear. They'll defend their freedom, their democracy, their lives. And we're going to keep providing security assistance, economic assistance, and humanitarian assistance. We're going to support them against tyranny, oppression, violent acts of subjugation. People everywhere, and I think it's maybe even surprised some of you all, people everywhere are speaking up for freedom. When the history of this war is written, Putin's war on Ukraine will have left Russia weaker and the rest of the world stronger. May God bless all those heroes in Ukraine. And now I'm off to Texas. Thank you very, very much. There's a lot of I know there's a lot of questions, but there's a lot more that has to be made clear, and I'm going to hold on that until we get more information. Thank you.
I am shocked and amazed to see such BS coming out from somebody that calls himself Brandon. The leader of the circus is totally off his rails. I am flabbergasted. Laura Ingraham from Fox News can put Joe's speech to the test better than I can, and may the light of truth come out. Have a listen.
Now, when President Biden finally announced his ban that you heard so much about today on Russian energy imports, he decided to use the moment to do something that is disgustingly Washington: shift blame.
This is a step that we're taking to inflict further pain on Putin. But there will be cost as well here in the United States. Defending freedom is going to cost. It's going to cost us as well.
Now, who's he kidding? We've been doing nothing but paying for Biden's and his party's mistakes since he took power. From their insane COVID mandates to their willful denial of inflation to their maniacal crusade against fossil fuels, and now their bungling of U.S. foreign policy. Now, this isn't simply incompetent. At this point, it's purposeful. I think it's vindictive. Democrats never let a crisis go to waste. We know that. And the fact is, Ukraine, just like the pandemic, is another tragedy for them to exploit in an attempt to save themselves in the midterms. Now, you think the country is going in the wrong direction? Pain at the pump? Well, all you need to know, it's Russia's fault.
It's going to go up. Can't do much right now. Russia's responsible.
Now, this is just one of the many lies that Biden's telling Americans who are suffering under his weak leadership. There's nothing that a U.S. president, the most powerful country in the world, nothing he can do about it? Nothing? It's all in Putin's hands? Are we all just imagining our previous energy independence under Trump? Well, that's what Biden wants you to believe.
It's simply not true that my administration or policies are holding back domestic energy production. That's simply not true.
Well, except that's precisely what he did do. He halted new drilling. He issued fewer permits. He ditched the big Alaska oil project. He suspended leases in Anwar, and he canceled Keystone XL. Now, that's what has us really behind the 8 ball now. And because solar and wind don't run America, we're more dependent now on despotic regimes for energy than under Trump. Now, enter the Biden team's genius new plan: boycott Russia, buy Venezuela. Oh, that's brilliant. Come on, but the lies didn't stop where we stopped them. They kept going on. Like, who's really to blame for the current predicament we're in?
A united response to Putin's aggression has been my overriding focus: to keep all NATO and all of the EU and our allies totally united. Today, we remain united. We remain united in our purpose to keep pressure mounting on Putin and his war machine.
Well, false. NATO is united or unified only to the extent that they all wish this didn't happen. It's a terrible tragedy. Of course, they all agree on that. But NATO unity is one of the greatest illusions ever sold. For starters, Germany opposes banning Russian energy. The Netherlands, they're not totally on board. And even the UK is wary of immediately cutting off Russian oil and gas.
You can't simply close down use of oil and gas overnight, even from Russia. That's obviously not something that every country around the world can do.
Well, maybe so, but that's Biden's fault too. They could have been buying from us, but Biden shut it down and empowered Russia as a major supplier of Europe's oil, natural gas, and coal. So what would have made us stronger and freer, and by extension, make Europe stronger and freer, the Democrats wholeheartedly rejected. And that's all on Putin? Well, he's just a beneficiary of our own self-loathing, self-destructive, terrible, awful, rotten leadership. Biden swore to uphold and protect the Constitution of the United States, not to uphold and protect international norms, global equity, climate change, and a border area in a non-NATO country. Yet the people controlling Biden, they know full well that their go green global agenda requires the resetting of the American mind away from the old normal to a new, more compliant kind of normal. So every move they make is designed to prepare you, America, to get used to living with a little less. Less travel, less privacy, less income, less freedom. But when you're pining away for the way that things used to be, don't blame Joe, blame Vlad.
Americans are paying a higher price at the pump because of the actions of President Putin. This is a Putin spike at the gas pump.
I'm going to do everything I can to minimize Putin's price hike here at home.
Who needs a White House press secretary, though, when you have a White House press corps to spin for you?
Gas is actually less expensive than it was in 2008 during the previous record if you take inflation into account. We spoke to one couple who says they say it's worth paying higher prices right now.
I'm willing to pay higher prices at the gas.
I am too. I'm willing to sacrifice and pay for the people that are suffering in Ukraine.
Now, every single person that we have spoken to here feels the exact same way. They feel that it's worth it to pay higher prices if it is supporting the people in Ukraine.
Oh, we'll see in November, won't we? Well, these are Biden propagandists. They would make Putin proud. They're so good at their job. Now, thus, when Biden drones on about the cost of defending freedom in Ukraine, our own citizens now, with everything that's been happening over the past 14 months, may be wondering about our own freedom and our own safety at home. Because they're seeing life's basic necessities become increasingly unaffordable and unattainable. Meanwhile, they see our southern border becoming increasingly overrun with migrants and criminal cartels. But don't think about that. No. You're not allowed to complain about anything that is happening here. No, you are not. Because if you do, you're just doing Putin's work. You're doing it for him. Or you do not care about the suffering of the Ukrainian people. You're a horrible person if you worry about your own country. Well, we do worry about Ukraine, but we also care a lot about what's being done to our own country by people who will not stop lying.
Russian oil will no longer be acceptable at U.S. ports, and the American people will deal another powerful blow to Putin's war machine.
A powerful blow. Well, the war in Ukraine will end when Putin gets the deal he wants, and not a moment sooner. When most of Europe is still buying oil from Russia, and when China's there to pick up the slack, our oil sanctions, they're not nothing, but they're basically symbolic. Finally, the venal, destructive role our press is playing here cannot be overstated. They don't believe that Americans paying higher gas and food prices is a real sacrifice for them. They believe America has too much. And it's time to reset the American mind altogether. Global thinking only, please. Now, despite all their alleged concern about Ukraine, the media remain committed to what we know is just a highly partisan and divisive agenda that weakens our country and ends up helping our enemies. For example, they could support more drilling here at home, so we'd be more energy independent, but they're not going to. They could dial back some of their anti-American propaganda that China's always citing back at us, but they won't. They could acknowledge that the 74 million people who voted for Donald Trump are loyal Americans. They're not traitorous fascists. But they're not going to do that. They could hold the Biden administration accountable occasionally for its mistakes, even if that means the GOP might, on occasion, benefit. Not going to happen. They could tell the truth about China, including how it influences U.S. politics. Don't hold your breath. All of these developments would make America stronger and thereby put us in a better position to help Ukraine and defend democracy. But no one really expects the media to abandon its radical hard-left agenda. Instead, they're going to continue their civil war against America firsters and their culture war against everyone who believes in traditional morality, and of course their propaganda war against the whole idea of the United States, because like Biden and like the Democrats, they care more about those causes than they do about Ukraine. In fact, just like Biden himself, their only thing that they're willing to sacrifice here is America. And that's the angle.
There's more truth in that last segment than I've heard in a long time. And how does high gas prices hurt Putin? And who in the heck in their right mind would pay higher prices for gas for some political statement? Maybe 10 cents, 15 cents, not $4, $5, $6 more. That's crazy. One thing that Laura didn't mention was that how Putin cured COVID around the world with this little excursion. Seriously, COVID is on the back burner, and the truth is coming out from that. That's unbelievable. Right before our eyes. Fauci. Over 1,208 different side effects from the vaccination. Oh, boy. It's just the beginning, folks. If we can get past this Putin war and these high gas prices that us Americans really want to pay. But you know what? Like I said, the media is going nuts. And here's a good example. Here's Stephen Colbert. This is what he's got to say.
Today, the average gas price in America hit an all-time record high of over $4 per gallon. I'm willing to pay $4 a gallon. Hell, I'll pay $15 a gallon because I drive a Tesla.
Wow, he's so funny. Got a Tesla. All right, enough of this Ukraine, Putin aggression, Putin war stuff. We need to keep moving on. Let's move on to Florida. Have you heard about the Florida House Bill 1557, which our Democratic left-wingers are calling it the Don't Say Gay bill? Here's more media manipulation at its finest. But have a listen.
Officially entitled Parental Rights in Education, it forces school districts to adopt procedures that, quote, reinforce the fundamental right of parents to make decisions regarding the upbringing and control of their children. That includes making school districts notify parents if there are changes to the student's mental, emotional, or physical health or well-being, not encouraging students to withhold information from parents, allowing parents to access their child's student records, letting parents refuse any health care services offered by the school, and getting parental permission before administering any health screening or well-being questionnaire. The bill also forces schools to respond to parent concerns within a week and resolve those issues within a month. If the school can't or won't, parents can escalate those concerns to the state for a resolution, or they can sue.
So from this House Bill 1557, Democratic weirdos and these crazy school people decided to go running around in the school singing all this stuff. Don't say gay. Have a listen.
And in case you don't know, they love the gays.
This is the rise of the Don't Say Gay bill being pushed by the evil Republican DeSantis. Here's how Mr. Ron DeSantis, the great governor of Florida, handled the reporter that tried to manipulate what the bill really means.
Bill 7, parental rights in education, what critics call the Don't Say Gay bill, is on the Senate floor.
Does it say that in the bill?
Know that you support.
Does it say that in the bill? I'm asking you to tell me what's in the bill, because you are pushing false narratives. It doesn't matter what critics say.
Hold on. It says it bans classroom instruction on sexual identity and gender orientation.
For who? For grades pre-K through 3. So 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. And the idea that you wouldn't be honest about that and tell people what it actually says, it's why people don't trust people like you, because you peddle false narratives. And so we disabuse you of those narratives. And we're going to make sure that parents are able to send their kid to kindergarten without having some of this stuff injected into their school curriculum.
Nothing about don't say gay, can't say it in school or practice it or what it. I'm telling you, this is the way the new norm is. You have to watch everything that comes out of these reporters' mouths and double check it, because this bill is actually something very good for parents and students. But again, we live in an alternate reality. This world is circus world. We're here for the greatest show on earth. Our next piece, it's coming from Florida again. The Florida Surgeon General, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, is talking about masks and the mask mandates. This is right after the big news was that Florida is the first state not recommending vaccinations for 5 to 7-year-olds.
You know, it's hard to find these in Florida. You got to look hard. But you know, if you know where to look, you can find them. So I brought this, right? So unfortunately, we have a country right now where most people, including, I mean, this is across the political spectrum, think that these things are saving lives. So to the doctors who tell you that these things save lives, ask them, you know, what did the 2 randomized clinical trials that we've done during the pandemic, what did they show? Ask them that when they tell you that these things save lives. One found nothing, 0 benefit. The other found a small benefit, like a tiny benefit that's a little bit methodologically shaky. And by the way, none of them found a benefit in young people. Not a single one found a benefit in young people. That's the highest quality evidence. That's what it showed. Lower evidence is what the CDC likes to tout. You know, shaky studies, shaky methods, finding 80% reductions in infection. Give me a break, you know? I mean, come on. Nothing that we're seeing in this country justifies that kind of conclusion. Good doctors who were brave enough to say what the science showed got punished. And that's happening, and it's still happening, where people are still holding up the illusion that these things save lives.
Now again, real science, not money science, is coming out, and the truth is being shown to us more and more every day. Do you remember Salty Cracker? Well, he's been banned from YouTube for the past 6 days because he brought up a sore subject about how the Ukraine is holding biolabs run by the United States in that country. And apparently that's a big no-no on YouTube. Well, today, the State Department announced that Putin has bombed several of our biolabs in the Ukraine. And, oh my goodness, the conspiracy theories are just flying off the shelves. You can't make this stuff up, folks. Clown world. Now to show you how crazy the world really is. Do you remember that flight, Malaysia 370, that disappeared 8 years ago?
In the history of aviation, there's never been a mystery like Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. It's so significant that that flight number, MH370, is known by most people. It was a modern passenger aircraft that took off from this runway in Kuala Lumpur on the 8th of March 2014 and simply vanished from the radars with its pilots, its crew and its passengers on board. Even today, no one knows where it is, but much more is known about what happened, the alleged cover-ups, the investigative failures and the possible motives of a pilot in command.
Well, new information has come out from a program or should I say, from the Ham Operators Radio Network. It's called Whisper, WSPR. Technology apparently has discovered the flight path, the actual flight path of MH370. I don't know how to tell you this, but it gets even crazier. But here, listen to this report on Whisper.
WSPR
Whisper, yeah,
may help us discover where MH370 is.
There's a good chance, yes. I think so.
Whisper is a network of weak radio signals that covers the globe. It's led to the creation of a revolutionary new tracking technology using the most unlikely of sources, amateur or ham radios.
A ham radio is an amateur radio operator using long-range radios.
And what's their purpose?
They talk to each other.
Around the world?
Around the world.
They're looking at aircraft. This one's here, this one's there.
Well, they're not even looking at aircraft. They're just talking to each other. They're logging who can talk to them and all this sort of thing. This whole idea about tracking aircraft was a very recent development.
With input from Captain Mike Glenn, British aerospace engineer Richard Godfrey developed the program. And this is how it works. Ham operators send out signals to see how far they travel. When it's received by another operator, it's logged into the Whisper database. Records go back to 2009.
Where does MH370 fit in?
Well, people started thinking maybe with the knowledge that when aircraft pass through these links between these two stations, that sometimes they change the signal and that can be picked up.
These signals act like tripwires. If an aircraft flies through them, they can then be tracked. And it's precise. The signals are sent out every 2 minutes. This has now led to a much more detailed flight path for MH370 and, more importantly, its final resting place. According to the Whisper flight path, at 12 minutes past 3 in the morning, 2.5 hours after takeoff, MH370 went into a holding pattern.
How can you tell that?
Because
there's a loop
of the shape. Yeah, if you see it larger.
Wow.
So it's a 22-minute holding pattern.
Wow.
There's no reason to do that.
And you have to be manned to do that.
Normal aviation, you would think so, yeah.
There's been a holding pattern that's basically accounted for some 22 minutes of flying.
Yes.
Which would take it off the previous endpoint.
Reduce the distance it could go south.
And this is all according to Whisper.
Yes.
Only the plane's flight recorder will tell us if MH370 did go into a holding pattern.
What do you think was going on for those 22 minutes?
Possible negotiation between maybe someone on the ground acting in concert with Captain Zahari, who I believe was responsible. And I think you've got to take into account that his political hero, Anwar Ibrahim, was locked up 5 hours before they left. If I had to speculate, I would say there's a negotiation going on there. You have a new election, you resign, telling Najib that he needs to resign. So that's a possibility.
The data points on the Whisper technology that's come through shows that there was a 22-minute holding pattern that was undertaken by the plane.
I don't know, but 22 minutes is a long time to be going around in circles. He must have been talking with someone. It's just a complete cover-up.
If that holding pattern was not there, let's say, the plane most likely would have flown further south. So that holding pattern actually then puts the plane where we think, from the oceanographic evidence, where the point of impact was.
Authorities had initially identified a 120,000 square kilometre search area, but they never had an exact spot for where the plane came down. Now there's been a major development in this long-running mystery. 2 separate sources have identified the same crash site.
A precise location, 33 0.177 degrees south, 95.300 degrees east. Are you inclined to believe that, or have you got another point in mind?
I've seen no reason to disbelieve it.
Whisper. Is this the biggest break we've had in a while?
It's the only game in town. It really is. There's nothing else happening. I think it's been shown from the tests that we did that it can be used for this, and I think we've got to give it a red-hot go. The potential search site is actually not that big. It could be done in a few weeks.
How does it affect the eventual crash site?
It brings it further north, and it brings it to the area that Professor Chari of the University of Western Australia said should be looked at.
That professor was on the money.
Yes.
From the early days.
Very much so.
Chari Pattiaratchi is one of the world's leading oceanographers. He's also a professor at the University of Western Australia. Analysing ocean currents and drift patterns, Professor Chari has come up with a crash site that is nearly identical to the Whisper coordinates.
So, Professor, after all this time, when it comes to where the wreckage of MH370 is, you might have been right all along.
Well, we have been right all the way wrong. We were right to say where the debris may end up in the flaperon. We were the first people to tell where that debris would end up in. So we were right there, and then we were right again now.
The site is 1,933 kilometres west of Perth, more than 4,000 metres underwater. Its mountainous seabed known as Broken Ridge. Despite making this finding just 6 months after MH370 went missing, the professor was never invited to take part in Australia's search efforts.
Why on earth didn't they ask you to be part of the process in the beginning, Professor?
It's very hard for me to answer that. They said that they didn't know I existed, which is probably not correct. But there are lots of contractual things that goes on in, as you know, in government organisations.
They appear foolish now.
Oh, absolutely.
In the 8 years since they went missing, there's been just one certainty about the fate of the 239 passengers and crew. It's the debris from the plane that's been found washed ashore, a sad testament to a tragic end for flight MH370.
When you ditch a 175-tonne aeroplane into a 4-metre swell at 250 kilometres an hour, it's going to break up. It's probably going to break a wing off. It's certainly going to break open the fuselage. I mean, that's a massive impact.
Following the stricken flight, it was Professor Chari who successfully mapped out the locations for much of the debris that's been so far recovered.
Well, how many pieces of the wreckage have now been found, Professor, because of your help?
In total, there has been 33 pieces of debris that has been found, have not been confirmed to be MH370, but most likely would have originated from MH370. And 23 of them we have accurately predicted.
So basically, your information is good.
Yeah, we have confidence in that, obviously.
Was it a mistake not to have Chari Pattiaratchi on the team from the get-go?
I think you're asking questions of me that occurred 5 years before I joined the agency. I do know at the time there were experts from Boeing, from Inmarsat, from the DST, from the CSIRO, from Geoscience. This was not a case of a couple of people sitting making assumptions.
Could you use them now?
Well, I guess we need to wait and see whether or not there is credence to this new theory. And then it will be something for the Malaysian government to consider if we reach to that point and there is a request to Australia. So there's a long road ahead of us before we even consider something like that.
If the wreckage is found, what is it going to be amongst?
Well, we are talking at water depths about 4,000 to 5,000 metres, so 4 or 5 kilometres down. And it is a very rugged, with lots of mountains, if you like, underwater mountains, volcanoes, big cliffs, ravines, etc. So we're in an area which is very close to the edge of what is called Broken Ridge, and that's 1,000-kilometer underwater mountain range.
One of the main reasons we brought this story up was that Larry and I could have sworn, or probably hoped, that this plane went into a vortex. Aliens took them. They went into another dimension, some kind of crazy storm. That would be much better than the actual truth that has come out. This bit that I played you came from Sky News Australia and 60 Minutes Australia. It's a 55-minute long show that goes into more detail and really puts some intriguing information out. But in a synopsis, there's a 90% chance that this was the pilot crashed into the sea because his demands weren't met. And there is more to this. Basically, the Malaysian government, the Malaysian military especially, and the Australian military tracked this plane and knew precisely when it went down and where, because they track everything on this world. Apparently, even the engines, everything turned off. Engines send a signal to satellite every hour to let them know on their performance and giving them data. They have this information as well. I'm just surprised that it took 8 years for this to come out. But again, we wish that they would have went into like the Bermuda Triangle type scenario. So these people would be alive, or, or something to effect that they landed in a different country. But I guess we live in a crazy world. Even 8 years ago, they were pulling this stuff on us. So with that, keep looking for the elusive truth. Larry will be with us next week, and he's got a lot to say. He's too infatuated with Aaron Rodgers right now, staying with the Green Bay Packers and getting $1 bazillion for 4 years, so he can't talk about anything else except that. But he will be back with his spin on everything, because it's going down and it's getting crazier. So enjoy, God bless, and peace out. We'll see ya. Bye.